Yeah. So today, the topic is algorithmic bias, or bias in AI, and we would have maybe a couple more sessions on this. So it's a big topic. It's very hot these days, and a lot of people are, studying this and looking at this at the moment. So you've read a few articles. A couple of articles. One was a guideline to, how we should audit this and make sure, that this doesn't happen for real-world applications. There was also, I think a video which is from a conference, a big conference in machine learning, and the speaker was trying to point out some case studies surrounding bias and algorithmic decision making, and also trying to put forward what the community should do. So we have some exercises for you that we think are going to be interesting and highlight this. Yes, Hans, please go ahead.
Yeah, but before we go to the exercises, I should have mentioned this earlier, but for those of us who don't have a computer science background, I think there was a useful distinction that the lecturer made that it'd be useful for you to explain again. The fact that, we have this colloquial use of bias where we mean a kind of prejudice or a kind of unfairness, whereas there's a from statistics, there's a meaning, there's a sense of bias that overlaps with, but is not the same as that. And so could you rehearse what the statistical meaning of bias is for non-computer scientists?
To me?
Yes, I'd like to ask you.
Okay. Yeah.
Or you can ask one of the students, it's fine. It was new to me.
Yeah.
When I heard the lecture.
Yeah. So I'm not sure I got your question on interest because I was doing something. I was busy doing something. I'm sorry.
Okay. No problem. The Australian woman giving the lecture at NYU talked about the fact that bias has lots of meanings.
Yeah.
And that before then in statistics, it's got a particular technical meaning that isn't normative in the way that the bias that when we talk about prejudice or unfairness is.
Yeah. So in statistics, right? So we have these estimators, right? So you kind of say, let's say I want to estimate the expected of a random variable, or let's say, a random variable represents, let's say, the number of people, waiting in a queue at this particular time. So that could be a random variable, right? And you want to estimate what is it, on average, right? What is the expected value of this? So, at noon, for instance, and let's say Subway, it's 10 people waiting in a queue to get inside Subway because at noon it's lunchtime. And so you have different types of estimators. Some are, biased estimators, and some are unbiased. And the bias here means, right, that you have to adjust for certain, issues or errors that you make in your estimation process. So that's really bias.
Okay.
In that sense, in statistical sense, and
that feeds over into the selection bias that social scientists talk about, or I guess selection bias is a version of confirmation bias, where when you're thinking about a probability, you notice the examples that confirm the hypothesis you have and not the others. And that was sort of halfway between the fully normative claim about bias being prejudice or unfairness, and this other one. Okay, good. So
it kind of touches on the fact that you're sampling and looking at a sample, and it's not of the word, no matter how big the sample is. Yeah.
So just for the group, I would just like to note that at the start we have 3 different specific, all equally good, but different definitions of bias. So keep that in mind as we move forward. That's all.
Great. All right. Let's start with the first activity. So on the video, one of the examples she was talking about was something called word embeddings. And what are these word embeddings? These are very important, constructs that we use in almost every machine learning application that does natural language processing. So you can think of information when you type in a query, Google search, and you get results. We use word embeddings to match documents or web pages to your query. Yeah. They're used in sentiment analysis of tweets. They're used in named entity recognition. You could think of almost any natural language processing application, right? Even talking to Siri and stuff like that. This is considered natural language processing. This uses word embeddings. And what are these word embeddings? Without getting into a lot of technical details, these are just representations of words. And the goal in the embeddings, it's a space. if you wish. And the goal is to try to figure out what words are close to each other in meaning. Yeah, so really looking at what words co-occur together all the time, and the words that co-occur together all the time should be close to each other in this embedding space. And that, if I have, a word type in a query, it's usually 2 or 3 words. I can, match it to close words inside documents. So if I type in a query like, let's say, computer programmer, and a document has coder instead of programmer, right? This should be matched, right? The document should match, right, this query, computer programmer, even though it doesn't say specifically or explicitly programmer, but because we know from the embeddings that coding and programming appear together all the time, so they have similar, yeah? You could think, this really, they're used in a lot of downstream applications. They could cause the revolution in the area of natural language processing, okay? Now, one big issue with these word embeddings, so they are trained or learned, so these representations of words are learned from analyzing a corpus of documents, let's say Wikipedia or the web or a news corpus. Yeah, so try to look at what are the terms that co-occur with every other term. Yeah, and this tells you which terms are close to each other and which terms are very far from each other. So Apple would be close to the words banana and eating, etc. Right? And how do I learn this? By looking at a lot of documents that mention apple and mention banana and so on. Yeah. All right. So we have a couple of questions and then we can do the exercise. So is it like psychological semantic connection when we relate ideas together in our mind? To an extent, yeah. It's slightly related. It's about getting semantic and syntactic relations between words. Yeah. So you want to represent words in a way so that you know exactly which words are close to each other. Yeah, so in a nutshell. Yeah.
I'm answering some stuff.
Right, exactly. Okay, so let's see one exercise. Yeah, so I'm going to take you to a link, and this is, one of the exercises we have for you on Moodle. It just takes you here to a demo of gender bias in word embeddings. So the problem with these word embeddings is, as I said, they learn from some background corpus, so like Wikipedia or news or even the whole web, you could imagine. And it's full of bias, right? These documents, these corpora are full of bias. In what way? If you look at the gender aspect, let's say, we expect certain words are more associated with women than they are associated with men. Yeah. So we expect, right, that if you look at the web and look at the man, what is the words that associated or talked about when you talk about a man, it's going to be strong and masculine, and women it's going to be maybe different types of adjectives. So what this demo does is it allows you to explore one set of word embeddings, and there's many of them. It allows you to explore it, right? Compare what is closest to man and what is closest to women in this specific word embeddings they're studying. Yeah. So how do you do this? Let's say I do an example here. I'm going to look at adjectives, so I can choose a category. And what it does is it shows me, what are the adjectives that are closest to, he or man, and what are the closest one to she. Yeah. So in the embedding space, meaning what? Meaning if I have a large corpus that I learned from associations, what are the words that are commonly associated with he versus she. And if we look at this, right, so if you look at...
I don't think you're sharing yet.
Okay, sorry, I'm not, right, you're right. Okay, share screen. Okay.
There we go.
Yep, so now I'm looking at this demo.
Oh, it's split in, okay, there we go. Ah.
Okay.
You can only see the top.
This
he and she in the numbers.
Yeah, okay. So I'm gonna scroll down, right?
Okay.
So now I'm looking at adjectives that are mostly associated with he versus she. And if you look at this, this is a word cloud that tells you what are the the closest word to he, this embedding space versus she. And this shows you the individual words, right? And how close they are. So guy is the most, the closest word to he, the most associated word with he, and a particular background corpus.
Just to help understand these numbers, what's the highest value possible? 1?
It's one, right? So we can
Okay.
1 and 0. Yeah. Okay. And now you see guys, you see, cocky, you see hard-nosed, you see flashy, but you see also brilliant, legit, smartly. So you really see these are the types of impressive, these are the types of adjectives that are associated with man. And on the other hand, these are the adjectives associated with women. So sassy is the closest word, right? Sexy, gorgeous, cute, lovely, beautiful, fabulous, prettiest, right? So there is, a striking thing here. What do you think? Do you have any thoughts on this? Do you think this is normal? This is okay? Any thoughts? This is sexist, Khalil is saying, okay?
I think
Yeah.
I think in general, I mean, maybe in context of like what we read, there is just that part of AI or this categorization that has to do with how we how we live or how we have conversations or how we talk and all of that. And yeah, I guess that's all I want to say because it's a little complicated. Yeah.
So I think what you're getting at is that it's not the problem of the model. So it's not about how these, word embeddings were generated. It's not the algorithm that generated them. It's more about the data it's learning. The data it's learning from is full of these, biases, right? So that's really definitely what we're trying to see here.
You may have said this already, but do we know the source of the data that they got this from?
I think it might be mentioned somewhere. I don't see it here. They don't say exactly which. I think So here they say word2vec word embeddings. That's from Google. Yeah. So that's the generated by Google, and it uses Wikipedia. It uses a lot of news. It uses really
So it's kind of the whole web.
It's not the whole web. Yeah. It's not the whole web, but it's really large enough corpus. So various. I mean, even Wikipedia, right? You think Wikipedia is going to be, scientific and not really biased, but it seems right that, this is how things are. I'm going to show you another example. So I can also I can here choose, different categories. So I can choose, let's say, from here, a second. Yeah. Choose something else like debate, for instance. So it just tells me what are words, Okay. Yeah, that's also an interesting example. So in terms of the context of debate, yeah. So what are the words, right, that belong to debate or heavily used with debate, and their associations with he versus she. And as you see, right, question, debatable, doubting, concede, decide, clashed, criticize, and women is bickering, moan, resent, right, fear, fretting. Yeah. So again, I think this is a clear example of some sort of gender bias. You can even choose here. You put your own words, and I want to show you one that is, I think, was very cool. So I'm going to choose. I can put a word here, and it's going to give me, in the context of medicine, what is the closest word to he or the closest words to he versus she. What do you think the closest word to he to she is going to be in the context of medicine? Any thoughts?
It's already shown us that it's nurses.
Yes, absolutely right. You see registered nurse at the closest word to she. Then
cosmetic,
skincare, cosmetic surgery,
midwife. Midwife is fair.
Yeah, and man, you have surgeon, you have a neurosurgeon, you have neurologist, you have cardiology, right? That's really, really bad because, as I said, these things are used in downstream applications. Yeah. So let's say I'm doing information retrieval. I'm trying to do a query and find documents, that match a certain word, right? These things are used, and these associations are used, and these kind of affect, right, these applications a lot. Okay.
Would you try university?
Yeah, sure, we can try. Let's try university. Okay, let's see what it gives me. Click here, I guess. Okay.
Sorority.
Arts, bookstore, library, nursing. Yeah.
Alumni.
Yeah.
Then finish.
Yeah.
Professor Emeritus, physics.
Yeah.
I bet arts comes way higher, yeah.
Yeah.
For women.
Yeah. So basically arts is really close to women, right? Compared to here you find, athletic, institute,
Physics,
engineering, right? Physics, right? So it's really
geology.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Wow.
So I want you maybe to try your own example, and for 5 minutes to go to the link, go to Moodle, just click on the link, and then try an example here. Put your own words, whatever you think is going to be interesting, and it's going to show some sort of bias. And create a snapshot once you find an interesting example. Create a snapshot and upload it at the end of the class. Yeah? Just to make sure that you try this out. So you try a word, Cynthia, and then you see he versus she, right? We try the context, let's say university or medicine or engineering.
There, find the link on Moodle.
Just go to, isn't it? Is it hidden? Yeah, it's hidden. 1 second, let me just turn it off. Turn everything on. Okay. And I'm gonna unhide me. It's it's available, right? Can anybody?
Gender bias in word embedding.
I'm attended by email. Yeah. Just refresh your Moodle in case you're just do a refresh. It should be shown now. Yes, reload the page. Khalil is saying. Just reload the page. It should. Okay. Again, just go to the link. Don't spend too much time because we've already done this exercise. But I want you to try it out yourself once at least, and let us know. If you come up with a cool example, we can run one more example just for the sake of it.
Professor, I had a power cut. Can you repeat what you said in the last 2 minutes?
Yeah, go to Moodle, right? There is an activity called gender bias in word embeddings and under in-class exercises. So if you go to the module we're currently at.
Yes, I can find it. I found it.
What is that? I'm not hearing anymore.
In algorithmic biases.
Yes, I found it. Thank you.
In class material, yeah. Gender bias in word embeddings.
Yeah, don't waste your time uploading now. Yeah, submit a screenshot, right? But you don't have to do it now, right? You can keep it on your computer as a tab, and then at the end of the class, once the class finishes, you upload. Yeah. Yeah, just send us in the chat once you're done, your example, so we can, pick one of them and have a look on it together. Okay, philosophy, professional, engineering, okay, sexist, dance, successful, okay, very interesting examples. Dope, okay. Genius, politics, very, very cool examples. Let's try one of them while the rest are doing. Any suggestions? Hans, do you have a preference on the ones? Did we do engineering? I think engineering. I like engineering. Let's see.
Okay, that's good. I did aggressive. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I'll try aggressive. Engineering. Okay. All right. So engineering, right? For men, it's engineers, geologist, shipbuilding, electrician, right? All right, other stuff, architects. For women, it's modeling, designers, graphic design, ceramics, designer, anthropology, chemical, workforce. Okay, yeah. See, there are some biases. Okay. So Reem thinks she's disappointed. You tried aggressive, we said. So try aggressive.
Yeah, I did do aggressive. The first thing you notice is aggressive is not associated with women very often, but when it is, it's mostly negative.
Yeah.
And it's generally neutral or positive for men.
Okay. Orthodox, defensive. Yeah.
Tactical, prudent, shrewd.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Skilled,
Yeah.
skillful.
Yeah. 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 That's
and
it.
over here you get feisty, abusive.
Okay. Okay. Interesting.
Although proactive is positive.
Yeah. So I see there are other examples. So genius, somebody's recommending genius, and I mean you can try it. I'll try.
Genius is good. That's a good idea.
Also, Reem is saying right that she put business and she got right, management and investment for men versus basically sales person and shopping for women. Yeah, I'm sure you can find all sorts of examples that makes this point.
Oh, the genius one is really interesting.
Yeah?
Wow.
Let's try it. Okay, last one, right? So we have to. I know this is fun, but genius have you done? Okay, let's try it. Hero, legend, genius.
But, I mean, just the raw numerical difference is interesting too.
The what?
Just the raw numeric difference that there's so few associations with genius for she, and that the biggest one is muse. Which means you help somebody else be a genius.
It's unbelievable. Yeah, yeah. Okay. All right, so let's move on, right? I'll show you another example, and you can upload your snapshot with, show us your example, and then maybe the word cloud if you can't get everything on the screen. But you can always, zoom in and just upload everything so we could see what you're doing. Here's another example, and the speaker again, I forgot her name, talked about, one of the examples she talked about is the issue with bias when it comes to image tagging. Yeah, so these are very popular applications, and people love them, and they're used for various scenarios of various downstream applications. And showed an example of how Google image tagger automatic, right? It's an automatic system. Tag African American women as gorillas. Yeah, that was the big scandal in the media, and they fixed that by just removing the tag gorilla altogether, right? I think from their output. Now I want to show you some examples. So this is a tagging system, automatic tagging system based on the latest trends in machine learning, and I'm going to upload some images that I've prepared. And show what the system tagged them, and we could look at certain differences. So I'm going to start with, I think, this one. Yeah. So an image of a typical stereotypical, I'm sorry for using that word, but yeah, like a North American woman. Just a bit slow for some reason. Close this. Hello? I don't know why. Let me refresh. Okay, and then upload the image. Right. Oh, yeah, okay. It's opening. That's woman. Yeah. Okay, so here are the tags. Can you see them?
I'm having trouble getting back to the main Zoom page.
Just go down, right? So there is this blue thing with the camera on, right? The video camera on, right? On down in your taskbar or something like that. Just click on it. You should get back to. Okay, so you have that basically tries to describe the image using certain keywords that are most descriptive of the image. So here it says this woman has adult, model, and you can see even more tags here. So person, eyes, smile, and that's done automatically using a machine learning model. Okay, so that's for the first example. Let's do the second. And what do you observe? Everybody's still seeing what we're doing or no?
Now I see what we're doing.
So you have what do you think of this? So it seems,
Let's see where people are. Speak up if you can't see what we're looking at. We've got two labels: generated tags and upload your photo. Are you looking at that page?
Yes.
Anyone else?
yeah, I think so. They're starting to write on the chat that they.
Oh, I see.
Okay, so you see exactly, right? Man, male, right? Business, etc. Yeah, so really, yeah. And why do you think this is happening? I mean, any thoughts why this is happening? Yeah, and Cynthia is saying, okay, of course, right, for the woman, it says, sexy and model, etc. So that's another aspect, yeah. So it's, here you have a race, discrimination or bias, but you have also, like a gender bias in another way. But why do you think this is happening? Why is the system, screwing up on the image of this woman? I mean, what might have caused that? So again, I think data was not inclusive. Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, that's a good answer from Kena.
Data.
The data.
Data sets. The data set initially was biased, so it was completely filled with stereotypical North American white people.
Yeah.
Quotations.
It hasn't been.
So the data is biased towards that. And seeing, for example, a woman with long hair, then people with shorter hair would be defined as male for the computer, for example.
Absolutely, right? It's probably, yes, exactly. It hasn't been exposed to a variety of women, right? It learned, right, that, women has to be long-haired and blonde and stuff like this, right? And that's a problem absolutely of the data it was trained on, right? And this is really a good point. Let's try another example. I'm gonna show you. Yeah, so I got an image of a COO man, right? So an image, right? I did Google search, and I got this image of from one of the results of the query CEO man. Okay, and you see businessman, executive, suit, business, professional, confident. Okay, so these are the tags. Okay, so I'll answer your question, Georgie, in a second. But let's see the difference if I do the same for CO woman. Yeah, so again, just Google Drive, get me an image of a CO woman from Google. This is the image it gave me, and I tried to tag it automatically using this tool. And you see here, smiling, happy, indoors, man, director, sitting, table, couple, and so on. So again, right, lifestyle, home, coffee, cup, right? So it's really, you see a difference in the way it sees, men versus how it sees women. And again, because it's not really, I mean, in most of the cases, right, when it learned about it, so it could be also that it has enough women, but it doesn't have good tags for them. Yeah, because it learns from two things, right? How people annotate these images, or what is the context, right, written about these images, and the images. Yeah, so it could be a bias in the images that it's exposed to, but it could also be biased about how these images are described. Yeah, so let me take Georgie's question. Can you elaborate, Georgie, what you mean? Yeah. Okay. So what does it even have made, right? So that's really a good question. And the problem is these are black boxes, so people don't understand why. But it may be because of the short hair, maybe you know, she's wearing a jacket as maybe that's what Georgie meant before, and so on. Yeah. So it's not. It's enforcing stereotypes. Yeah. Yeah, imagine, right? So essentially, I was asking, people who non-binary, who identify as non-binary, right? How does this, work with them? Right? That's a good point, and I don't know how to answer that. And again, I'm saying it could be ethnicity as well. That's true, and it's very difficult to understand why are they doing this. Yeah, I mean, it could be, it's most definitely right about the data set and how the data is trained, but how can I solve this? How can I, counter?
I just had kind of a random thought. I'm wondering if this seems plausible to people. If you have more men overall in your data set, then you've got a wider variety of types of faces and colors and shapes and everything. And if your set of women is smaller, then if you don't get a good fit with that small set of women faces, it defaults to the male face because you've just got by default a wider range because you had more numerical input. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
It's really striking how often it says these women are men.
Yeah.
That's just my thought.
Yeah, I think, so I think George is trying to say something very similar. So he's trying to say, okay, you try to understand what the machine is doing. It sees, some examples. And then maybe in most of the, examples, it has seen men wearing suits. Yeah. So it learned to associate, the word man with the word suit or the jacket. Yeah. And that's why it's, now it sees the jacket in the image and thinks, okay, that's a man, right? What is the most associated term with the word jacket, right? Or the concept of a jacket? It's man. Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't, right? So Miguel, you have a point, right? It doesn't know whether this is just give it an image and it describes it based on what it has learned, right, from previous data sets or previous images that it has been exposed to. Yeah.
So the only input it gets is pictures.
Yeah.
And then it gets trained by rewarding when it gets the right outcomes according to the humans. That's the idea?
Yeah.
So it gets no information like this is a picture of a CEO, this is a picture full stop.
No, but it takes the following, right? So to train this model or to allow it to generate, you would have, let's say images and some description of these images, right? Like, okay, so, it's a woman sitting, on a table eating, drinking a cup of coffee, right? So you have to
give that would be in the training set.
In the training set, exactly.
Okay.
And then at test time, like now, all you have to give it is an image, and its job is to describe it.
Okay, that helps you. That helps to make sense of it. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'll show you one more example. I see, right, that some people are getting uncomfortable. I'm sorry for that, but that's the sad reality. And we're trying to, stir this discussion and try to think about this, and hopefully, would have. Or some of you later on in the future would have some solutions to this, right? In various fields that you work in. So I'm going to show you one example. So it's not about just age. It's not just about gender or race. It has really, it's multidimensional. So I found, 2 images. This is, obviously it's education, classroom, teacher, student. So it's perfect, right? It really is a good description of this image if you ask me. I'll get back to your point, Daniel, but let me finish this example, right? So I have now, I give it just an image. It managed to describe it really well, in my opinion. Class, school, student, teacher, education, blackboard. Let's give it a very similar image. What do you see? Senior, grandfather. In fact, right, I have this one, retirement, right? So the bias and discrimination is across really multiple demographics, and it's really something that is disturbing and something that has to be addressed very urgently. Yeah. So I think, right, let me see, there was Daniel was saying something. For context, I think there's a fundamentally suicidal issue before technology. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's two issues that are related to that, Daniel. Thank you for raising that point. One is that we were hoping, the people who believe in AI were hoping that we could make smart systems that are better than people or less prejudiced than people. So that was the hope, and it seems like it's because of the way the data sets get constructed, because of the way the power relations in our world work, that it turns out to be quite hard to do that. And the second point is the worst of all case scenarios is if this exacerbates the problem, makes it worse, because then you don't even have humans in the system to check it and say like, well, why did that guy get denied a loan? Like, oh my gosh, he got denied a loan because he has darker skin than the guy who didn't get denied a loan, right? So those are the sort of, yes, it's a societal issue and reflects society, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't try to fix it in the technology we build that helps us sort these categorization issues.
Right. Exactly. Because these could have, severe consequences on people's lives. We're using these tools now for various reasons, and some of them are, really determined. Okay, cool. Let me move to one more, and then I think Hans maybe would wrap up with some discussion that we think are very relevant to this. So you all know Google Images. So I'm gonna try to search for, some examples, right? So I show you that this is even an issue in big companies, or, the best companies right now, like. So this is what you get if you query, right, or do a Google image search for beautiful woman. Right, this is what you see. Any thoughts? Diverse, mostly white, and then Lupita, of course, yeah, she is a very beautiful woman. So they got it right, and that's because she's famous, and yeah. But I think the point is the following, right? There's lack of diversity. There is, basically again, the stereotyping. So a beautiful woman here is just a white woman who's thin, who's young, and that's not because, in my opinion, right, the algorithm is trying to, is biased itself. It's because this is how things are described on the web. Yeah. What is Google image search is doing? Is it looking, at web pages? What are the words, right? That says beautiful women, and what are the images there? And then it provides you with the ones, that it thinks are most relevant. Yeah. And it happens to be, that's what people think. So it's reinforcing these stereotypes. Yeah, it's not doing this because it's evil or because people who are behind it are doing this. It's really because, right, this is how the data it's working on shows. Yeah. So I want to ask you as a second exercise, maybe for 4 or 5 minutes, to go to, again on Moodle, and try to come up with a query. You can think of even, queries in Arabic. It doesn't have to be in English. Try to see if you can come up with an example that shows, that this is, this is the case, or not necessarily with respect to gender. Could be with respect to race. Could be with respect to other things, or even something that is, Can we put our image? So. Yeah. So there is, a service for Google. I don't know if it's still there, but you can actually search by image. You upload an image and it gives you similar images. But the issue of diversity is a big deal here. Yeah. You can try it on the other one, but I'm asking you to go right to Google image search, and then try to try to come up with a query that shows some sort of bias when it comes to image search. In the video, she discussed the examples like doctor and nurse, and they have fixed that. for sure. And CEO, so they have managed to, diversify that. And you would see, if you type in doctor, you'd see a combination of men and women. That wasn't the case maybe a year ago or 2 years ago. I tried it myself. Same thing for nurse, they fixed that. But the problem is they're fixing these manually. They're not really fixing the actual problem, which is data, and which is, okay, if the data is biased, I have to do something about it. I have to make, adapt my algorithms and make them overcome this bias issue. Yeah. 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 So this is what I'm saying. So Jersey tried scientists and they have fixed it, because they're not doing a conceptual fix. So they're not really trying to tackle this as a big problem that we have to deal with. They're not solving it for every case. So go to Google image. Yeah. So again, you can go to the second bias in Google image search on Moodle. Cynthia, you go here. Yeah. Click on the link here, and then try to type in some query and see, what results you get. Okay. And then tell us, so the query that you've tried as well. Okay. So Arab man, for instance, since you tried Arab man, again, take a snapshot at the end of the class and upload it. So Arab man, I'll try it for sure. Anybody doesn't get the exercise? Okay, good. Arabs, okay, so yeah, I could imagine. And then Gloria said, okay, so I put woman doctor and she got only white skin. Okay, okay. Makes sense. Other examples?
I put in Texan, and Texas was one of the first states in America to go what they call majority minority. There's more, put Hispanics and African Americans and Native Americans together. There's more of those than people of European descent. Every single image of a Texan, when you do Google images, Texan is white. Every single one.
Yeah. So Texan, what? Like, did I spell it correct? T-E-X-A-N, person?
Yeah, T-E-X-A-N.
That's it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Other thoughts? I see some good examples. We can try a couple of them, but I want to see, journalists.
Pro-racist, and it showed pictures of Trump. That was Gaina.
It's actually working.
All businesswomen were white. That's interesting.
Engineer.
Software engineer, good mix. That's another one where I bet they fixed it.
Yeah. So what your Google search differ from someone else? That's a good question. It depends on whether you're logged in or not. Yeah. So if you're logged in, like me, yes, your search results are going to be a little slightly different because it learns also from your history and your background. So these. And this is some issue, right? We read about in one of the articles when we talked about personalization and how things change from one person to the other and whether this is fair or not. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, a lot of people tried Arab. So if you do Arab man or Arab woman, tried Arab woman, and as you see, they're all Khaliji, mostly veiled women. So again, certain stereotype. Dancer is mostly women, and then businesswoman. Okay, businesswoman only shows right white, white or Asians. Right? I see an Asian here, at least for me. Yeah, so you get it, right? There is a yeah, the land, right? So it's working well, right? We're talking about examples that actually has some, protected attribute, dynamic. Okay, so a lot of examples I think are interesting. Okay, I have another, thing at the end, right? So you can try as many examples as you want, but just upload one, a snapshot of one at the end, that you've participated in this activity and thought about. I have one more, scenario. Maybe we do it if we have time after Hans, do the next exercise.
Sure.
You want me to allow you to share screen, or you don't need it?
No, I don't have any text to put up. I'm gonna talk through this.
Sure.
And let me know if the audio gets choppy, because I can put some of it in the text.
Mm-hmm.
From reading the reflections and taking a quick look at the summaries, a pattern had emerged, and I think actually from the two exercises that Shadi has led us through, this has been corrected for, but I want to just reinforce it a little bit. Do you remember from the lecture when the woman talked about a particular case where the researchers made a conscious decision to choose images for their training set that were from news media?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that scenario?
Yes. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. A couple. Yeah. And what was the reason why they chose that pool of photos? No, but okay, fine, bias, sure, but what was the reason the designers, the programmers had for choosing that set of photos over another set?
Hans, maybe you want to repeat it again, because I think people were moving from the Google search. So maybe if you want to repeat.
Okay. So the researchers in this case that the lecturer was talking about, they knew that there were lots of pools of photographs out there. You can go and look at photographs from fashion magazines. You can go from photographs from sports stars. You can go to photographs for, people in entertainment. There's certainly a lot of those on the web. And they decided to take pictures from basically newspapers, from news media. What was the reason that they chose that set of photographs, the researchers?
They thought it was more like real life.
Right. So here's a case where you've got researchers who are self-consciously trying to avoid biases. Like, if you went to entertainment, it would skew young and attractive. If you went to athletes, it would skew young and fit or whatever. And so they said, look, everybody ends up in the news, right? Criminals end up in the news. I don't know. Everybody ends up in the news. But then what did they find out when they actually started noticing what their algorithm had been trained well in and what had not been trained well in?
Anybody remembers? Bush, right? Do you remember she had an example about Bush? Yeah.
The president appeared a lot more than the rest, but also the demographic group that the president is drawn from. Yeah. So you think, lots of people end up in the news, but some people appear more likely than others. Social class bias. Okay, thank you, Miguel. That's useful. So, right. The people who end up in the news tend to be the people who are on top of the power hierarchy. And I think they were looking at US media mostly, but if it included anything outside of the US, it would have been Europe. So white middle-aged men, and again, as someone pointed out earlier, we ought to use that in quote because it's a social construct. White middle-aged men are mostly what ends up in the news. And of course, the most powerful of them, like presidents, will be the most. And so what I wanted to point to, because several people, I don't know, maybe half of you guys, when you were talking about in your reflections and summaries, were worried about the biases in the programmers and thought that was where the bias was coming from, meaning injected into the algorithms. But the really pernicious issue that your readings were pointing to is that even if your bias have your designers and programmers have the best of intentions and they self-consciously try to not create biased learned systems, the problem is the bias is out there in the world, and this is the point that Daniel was making. And in particular, the media that's on the web, which it's its own weird slice, but it's very, very hard to get data sets that don't reflect the power relations that exist in the world. And so that's where the kind of unavoidable bias comes from. And again, I think you guys were picking up on that as we were going through those examples, but I just wanted to emphasize that it isn't really the programmer's evil, classist, elitist intents we have to worry about. Usually, in most cases, the programmers have the right goal in mind. It's just that the problems are out there in the kind of images that exist in the big junk pile that's the internet. Okay, that's what I wanted to emphasize. Thank you.
Yeah.
Should we do one more exercise?
Sure, yeah. But I would just want to add, maybe one thing. So I think you're absolutely right. And why this is a huge problem. So even if you have good intentions, is we don't know how to deal with this. Yeah, because the data we have that we could use to train these models it's biased, and we need to start. That's why the community needs to start thinking about this. How do I build, algorithms and AI models, machine learning models that are able to, come up to at the end with unbiased decisions, even though it's learning from biased data. That's really the crucial thing that the community is trying to achieve right now. And there's a lot of studies and a lot of research on this, even if the data is biased, how do I make sure that it's not, the outcome is as fair as one could possibly hope. And I think the second article, so this principles for accountable algorithms, try to at least say, how can I, test for this, understand whether, a certain algorithm or a certain product is fair or not. So they give, some guidelines, like you have to allow these, these products to be audited by third parties or by the public. You have to, open the box and explain exactly how this is working so that people can contribute to this, researchers and otherwise, and give you ideas of how to fix it. People should be able to try it before, it's launched and become, it starts affecting people's lives. And I think this is, even though this article is just, something from a conference and it's not really a policy or anything, I think it's an interesting and, one step in the right direction. Yeah. All right, one more example, and then maybe we can have a couple, we can hear from you. So again, she mentioned something about the translation in her talk. She talked about, translating from Turkish to English and back to Turkish, which is gender neutral. Yeah, so it doesn't have genders. And she kind of showed that, there is, again, some sort of gender bias here. I'm going to show you that this happens in Arabic as well. And if you don't speak Arabic, please, I'll try to translate what's happening. Yeah. So I'm going to just show you a couple of examples. So here, if you type doctor, yeah, and then you translate it to Arabic. What do you think Google Translate? Google Translate is the best translation, automatic translation system out there these days. What is it going to translate it into?
Tabib.
Tabib, yes.
Yeah, okay. So let me maybe go back to the easier interface. This would, yeah, here. I'll do the following, English.
Just switch the languages.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, it did already. The doctor, and gives me tabib, as you said. Okay, what do you think of nurse?
Is tabib genderized?
The tabib is right, it's genderized. So in Arabic, most of the nouns are genderized. So you have tabib and tabiba, right?
Oh, right.
Yeah. So again, doctor gives you the male version, tabib, right? And the nurse
Mumarrad.
gives you mumarrida, right? Which means female nurse. Yeah. So when you translate nurse, automatically using Google Translate, of course, this is just a word. Yeah. Somebody saying something?
There is one I tried because you mentioned that Yes, there is one I tried because you mentioned the Turkish has neutral thes,
Yeah.
and I tried kind of vulgar one where I put he is a prostitute and she is a doctor, and then they flipped them when I translated back
Wow.
from
Another
yeah.
Huh? Yeah. So you could imagine, right? If you try some of the words, right, that are associated with men. So the system, right, the best system in automatic translation also have these, biases in it. So Nabila Singh she didn't pay attention to it, and of course, right, most of the time, this gets overlooked, but it might have an effect. You don't know what the system is being used for. Yeah, at the very end, even if it doesn't have it shouldn't be acceptable. Yeah? It shouldn't be acceptable that you translate nurse to female nurse in Arabic. Yeah, yeah, it should be gender neutral, or they should be aware of these things. I can't think of other examples. Do you have other examples you want to try? So,
Try philosopher.
Philosopher, okay. Philosopher, okay. It gives you philosoph, which is the, right, again, the male. Yeah, the male.
That's surprising.
Yeah.
Engineer gives muhandis also. It's male version.
Yeah. But let's try dancer, for instance. Raqisa, right? So dancer is female, yeah, whereas engineer and right, designer is gonna give you probably male, yeah, musab. So it's not intentional, yeah, it's not really that they really intentionally doing this. It's just that the system.
It's trained by frequency. Yeah.
Yeah. It's trained, based on some, text that it has seen. So how is it trained? It's trained based on, parallel corpora. So it sees, sentences of Arabic and sentences of English, and then it learns, right, that this word means this word. And most of the time, when you use doctor, it's the corresponding, text in Arabic is tabib, and when you see nurse, it's mumarrida or female. So
the only two academic disciplines I know for sure that have more females than men are professor of education and art historian. I don't know if we'll get different results there.
That's right, professor of education. I doubt it, right? Ustaz al-Tarbiyah. So we got no male, right? The male version for So Khalil, so I think Cynthia would think, but this is a bigger problem with the Arabic language, no? So why? I mean, the Arabic language, it's not a problem that you have genders in the Arabic language. The problem really, Cynthia, the training data that is this model is based on, or the system is based on, what is it? It's a set of sentences or documents, in English, and the corresponding translations in Arabic. And what happens is in this data, whenever you use the word doctor, you translate it in Arabic because of the translators or because of the, how they got these matching these sentences with documents. The word tabib is corresponding to doctor, whereas nurse is corresponding to Umar. Yeah, it's not really about a problem in the Arabic language, if I understood you correct. Yeah, so Georgie is saying it's not only Arabic. So it could be that it's an issue with any language that has genders. So German does have genders, and I would imagine that the problem exists there as well. Yeah, because this is what the data it learns from is going to be definitely biased. So I'm not talking. This is not particularly for Arabic. I'm just showing an example that most people would understand.
Actually, I'd like to say something about the German one because it's interesting. Although you do have a word for female doctor, and just like it, it's almost worse because it's not just whether it's got a genderized ending. The default name for almost all professions is just the word that it used to be is male, and then you can add an ending to make it female. And there's all kinds of ways in which it's old-fashioned too. There's no distinction between the word for man and husband, and there's no distinction between the name for woman and wife. So they're just assumes everyone gets married. And probably worst of all, the word for virgin is just young woman. Jungfrau, which is about as sexist as you can get, I think. Yeah. So anyway, I like the suggestion, Khalil, but it doesn't work, unfortunately. German's got lots of problems with its genderization.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, because of a stricter reason. So I see your point, Cynthia. It's a problem of the language. It's problem of the usage of the language more than the problem with the language itself, I think. Yeah, that's at least my opinion. Yeah. So how we're using the language in everyday context. Yeah. Okay, so what do you think? I mean, how can we solve these issues? I mean, these systems are being used on a daily basis. These are coming from the biggest companies in the world, right? What are we supposed to do? Somebody said report it. So reporting means, yes, means, these companies allow people to audit their systems, report issues that come, that are related to bias, and they need to go back to the drawing table, and try to fix these issues, and not fix it, case by case, but really fix it fundamentally. Yeah, that could be one possibility. But what else? Yeah. So unless you fix data sets, yes, of course, there is the confirmation bias. It's just gonna repute it. Okay. Other thoughts, people? Do we still have computer scientists here? Anybody from the computer science side can tell us, what can you do? What do you think should be done? Just curious to see, if you have any thoughts on this. Miguel, okay, so he has.
I'm not a computer scientist, but I kind of thought, would it be possible to create an algorithm to combat the bias? It might seem counterintuitive, but so an algorithm that controls another algorithm.
Yeah.
So you teach the algorithm bias in order for it not to commit bias.
Yeah.
It's a funny idea, but I don't know.
It's interesting, right? Yeah, and I'm not aware of any work that does this, but there are certain ways of training these models so that they take into consideration bias. But you have to define what is bias explicitly, and what do you mean by bias. So you have to be very explicit about what you mean by bias, and then these models learn to avoid bias. So instead of focusing on accuracy. Yeah. So at the end, how many mistakes they make, according to their test data, they actually are willing to make more mistakes, but make sure that they're treating everybody fair. Yeah. But this is for certain applications only, and it might not work for everything. But I like your idea. It's an interesting idea. It's an interesting thought. There are certain systems or algorithms that audit other algorithms, and I will show you maybe next time something similar. So you can write, an algorithm. Its job is to, look at the output of another algorithm and tell you, is it fair or not? Yeah, based again on some fairness criteria or fairness principle. Okay, so I'll read Marlene's comment and then Hans, right? So we could try to change the standard, as in having the translations to the same gender, but then it would still be sexist. Yeah.
Marilyn, why would it still be sexist? I'm not quite following that.
Yeah.
Can you explain?
Marlon, do you have your mic on? Can you turn your mic on and let us know what you mean? Okay.
I mean, if you just defaulted all to one direction, so you didn't have to make the choice.
Yeah.
Or female, right?
I think when it comes to translation, right, it could be that context help a little bit, because we're looking at a word without a context. So that's maybe we're being too hard. If you add a context, it might help a little bit in translation. Yeah. So Hans, your question is what? Would it be fair to students of US history if you had US presidents given a 50%? I don't get it. Hans, can you explain it?
Yeah, well, it wasn't very well worded, but the idea is, so say you were doing an image search and you said US presidents, and in order to be fair, and not be gender biased, we threw up a mix of images of male and females. If you were quite a young student, like my kid's age, you might get confused and think that there had been all these female presidents, where notably the one country in the Western Hemisphere that has never had a female president is that one. So that's all I meant, that fairness and accuracy are in tension, especially when the problem is you're trying to accurately represent an unfair world.
Yeah.
That's what I was getting at.
Yeah, it's a very good point, actually. So yeah, the question is, do we want to really represent the world as is or not? And, I think it depends on the application. What are you using this for? And you know, do you want it to be representative of the real world? But as long as it, you know, doesn't have an effect or, you know, a serious outcome on particular group, underprivileged groups particularly, or you want to just use it to, you know, show the world as yeah. So I think you have to always think about what am I going to use this for, and based on that you make the decision of, you know.
That's a good point. Like if you're making a children's book about a non-specific president,
yeah,
you might want to go ahead and make that president female, but you wouldn't sort of pretend that one in the 19th century was. That's actually Marilyn's point there, which I think is quite a nice one. As she said, it might conceal the problem. You might have people growing up not thinking that is outrageous and ought to be fixed if they sort of get confused into thinking that there's been female and male presidents. Yeah, fair enough. We're having enough attacks on facts these days. We don't need more. That's really,
I think, yeah, you all see how difficult this is, and that's why as a community we're not really we don't know precisely what should be done or how do we fix all of this.
Gaina and Sana just had an interesting exchange. They're noting that fairness and equality can pull apart. The notions of equality and fairness can pull apart in some contexts. Whereas, that's really good point, guys.
Absolutely. And Khalid was saying this might also be a historical problem. So in the past, most professions would turn out for males, but today, it needs time. I see. Because there's also the conversation is happening. A lot of people are aware of this. There's a lot of movements to counter this, but the problem: how long can we wait? And I mean, technology is very fast, and it's infiltrating our lives at a very high scale and a very high rate. So we can't really wait. We need to fix this, and we need to fix this now, and we need to fix this by coming up with better technologies that can deal with these issues. That's at least my personal opinion.
Yeah, and not to put too fine a point on it, and I'm sorry to keep going back to American examples, but they're the ones I know the best. The 2016 presidential election really was an election, a race between the most qualified person who would ever run for that position. She'd been Secretary of State, she had been a senator, and she'd had jobs in the White House before, against somebody who had never had any political office before and had never done any public service. And basically, because of gender dynamics, the most qualified person lost. I mean, to me, it's as clear as day that was a situation where people's lack of comfort with the idea of having a female in the top job just completely undermined the electoral process. So we need to start getting into kids' heads somehow that it's okay for women to be in roles that we up till now haven't thought of them as traditional for. So anyway, that's the end of my rant.
We've covered this, as much as we can. So I think if you don't have any more things to say about this, or any thoughts, let us. I think we can end here. So, absolutely.
Thanks for a good discussion next time, guys. I appreciate people are very comfortable with the chat thing, but it helps us a little bit have a more normal flow of conversation if you're willing to unmute your mic and speak up. It really does feel more natural to us, but we'll work with the chat if that's where you need to be.
I agree. All right. So don't forget.
Are there office hours today? For right now, Jane, two students, Zaina, and I think it was Cynthia.
No, I think Gloria probably.
Gloria and Zaina, you can stick around for a little bit as everybody else drops, and we'll have a short conversation with you. And if we need to set up a separate meeting, we can.
Yeah.
But we're already going to meet with our TAs, and just stick around, and we'll figure out what you want to talk about in office hours. All right.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Don't forget to upload the 2 snapshots from the 2 exercises before 3:30 or so. And we'll see you next week.